October 2023. A researcher's sonar detected something wrong 17 feet underwater in the Florida Everglades, a boat, anchored in perfect military precision. It belonged to Staff Sergeant Michael Brennan, a decorated Iraq War veteran, and his 14-year-old son Tyler. In March 2006, they'd set off for a simple weekend fishing trip. They never returned. No wreckage. No distress call. For 17 years, they had simply vanished. What investigators found sealed inside that boat didn't just solve the mystery. It revealed why a loving father would take his son into the wilderness, and never bring him home. This is the kind of story you won't hear anywhere else: real mysteries, real families, and real heartbreak. So hit subscribe now, and let's uncover the truth together. Michael Brennan wasn't just any weekend warrior. This was a man who had earned his stripes in the sands of Iraq, where roadside bombs and sniper fire were daily realities. Staff Sergeant Brennan had completed 2 full tours in Baghdad during some of the most violent years of the conflict. He'd led men through urban warfare, made life-and-death decisions under fire, and brought his soldiers home alive. The army had decorated him for valor, for leadership, for the kind of courage that separates heroes from ordinary people. But the Michael who returned to Florida in 2005 was not the same man who had deployed years earlier. His ex-wife Lisa noticed it immediately. The way he startled at sudden noises, diving for cover when construction trucks backfired. The nightmares that left him drenched in sweat, calling out orders to soldiers who weren't there. The drinking that started as a way to sleep and became a way to forget. The rage that could explode over something as simple as Tyler leaving his homework undone. The soldier had grown up in South Florida, spending countless hours in the backcountry waters of the Everglades with his own father before the old man died in a construction accident. Those childhood memories were some of the few pure things left in his mind: sunrise over the sawgrass, the sound of fish jumping in hidden ponds, the way the wilderness could make all of civilization's problems seem insignificant. Before his deployment to Iraq, Michael could navigate the maze of mangrove channels and grass flats like a Seminole guide. Tyler was everything his father had been at that age: curious, adventurous, quick to learn. The son had earned his Eagle Scout badge the year before his father's final deployment, mastering skills that most adults never bother to learn. Knot tying, fire building, water purification, reading weather patterns. The boy worshipped his father, despite the changes that war had brought to their family. He'd learned to read his dad's moods, to know when to approach and when to give him space. Tyler understood, in the way that children of combat veterans often do, that his father carried invisible wounds. The son had read about PTSD online, had talked to other military kids at school about the changes in their parents. He knew that the man who raged at him for leaving dishes in the sink was the same man who had risked his life to save American soldiers in Iraq. The divorce had been necessary but heartbreaking. Lisa couldn't watch the man she loved destroy himself with alcohol and untreated trauma. She couldn't risk Tyler being exposed to the violent outbursts that were becoming more frequent. The final straw had come during a 4th of July barbecue when fireworks had sent Michael diving for cover, screaming for his squad to take defensive positions. Tyler had watched in horror as his father, disoriented and terrified, had mistaken their backyard for a battlefield. But she also couldn't deny that Tyler needed his father, and that these fishing trips to the Everglades were often the only times she saw glimpses of the old Michael, patient, teaching, present. In the wilderness, the soldier's hypervigilance became an asset rather than a liability. The father and son had established a ritual that became sacred to both of them. Every few months, they would load Michael's 16-foot aluminum boat with camping gear and disappear into the backcountry for long weekends. These weren't casual fishing trips to the tourist areas near Flamingo. These were expeditions deep into the maze of channels where cell phones didn't work and park rangers rarely ventured. The soldier taught his son how to read the water, how to spot the subtle signs that indicated where fish were feeding. He showed Tyler how to tie knots that would hold under pressure, how to start fires in wet conditions, how to find fresh water in a landscape that was mostly salt. Most importantly, he taught his son to respect the power of one of America's last true wildernesses. These trips became therapy for both of them. In the wilderness, away from the triggers and stressors of civilian life, the soldier found moments of peace that eluded him everywhere else. Tyler thrived in this environment, soaking up knowledge from his father while providing the kind of unconditional love and acceptance that the veteran couldn't find anywhere else. March 18, 2006 started like any other trip. The soldier arrived at Lisa's Fort Lauderdale home just after dawn, his pickup truck loaded with familiar gear. Fishing rods, tackle boxes, camping equipment, coolers full of food and ice. Tyler bounced around the truck like an excited puppy, eager to show his father a new lure he'd bought with his allowance money. The weather forecast was perfect. Clear skies, light winds, temperatures in the 70s. The soldier checked and double-checked their equipment with the thoroughness that had kept him alive in Iraq. Life jackets, emergency flares, first aid kit, extra food and water, marine radio, GPS unit. Everything was accounted for. But hidden beneath the familiar routine was something different. Buried in the boat were supplies that went far beyond what was needed for a weekend fishing expedition. Waterproof containers filled with medical supplies, emergency rations, water purification tablets, extra clothing, camping gear designed for extended wilderness survival. Lisa watched them drive away toward Everglades National Park, making Michael promise to call her when they reached the boat ramp. It was a routine they'd established after their divorce, a small gesture that helped her feel connected to Tyler's adventures. He never did call. The soldier signed the Marina logbook at Flamingo at 7:15 that morning. His handwriting was neat, confident, betraying none of the turmoil that investigators would later discover had been building for months. Michael Brennan plus son, backcountry fishing, Joe River area, returned Sunday evening. Lisa didn't start worrying until Sunday evening when 8 o'clock came and went without word. By 9, she was calling Michael's cell phone every few minutes. Straight to voicemail. The soldier had always been punctual, always kept his promises to her about Tyler. By 10:30, she was calling Park Emergency Services, her voice shaking as she tried to explain that something was wrong. The search began at first light on Monday morning. The soldier's white Ford F-150 sat exactly where he'd parked it 3 days earlier at the Flamingo boat ramp. The truck was locked, keys nowhere to be found, the boat trailer empty and properly positioned. Nothing appeared disturbed. There were no signs of struggle, no blood, nothing suspicious except for the fact that father and son had simply vanished. The Coast Guard launched search boats immediately. The Joe River was a popular fishing destination about 12 miles northeast of Flamingo, accessible only by boat through a complex network of channels and cuts. It was remote but not dangerous for an experienced boater like the soldier. For 72 hours, Coast Guard cutters and helicopters scoured every inch of the Joe River system. They checked every chickee hut, every mangrove island, every shallow flat where a boat might have run aground. They interviewed other fishermen who had been in the area that weekend. They deployed underwater sonar in the deeper channels. They found nothing. The weather had been perfect that weekend. Clear skies, light winds, no storms. The conditions were working in the searchers' favor, which made the complete absence of any trace even more baffling. Experienced boaters don't just disappear in perfect weather, especially not in areas they know like their own backyard. By March 22, the search had expanded to cover nearly 200 square miles of Everglades backcountry. Local news crews arrived at Flamingo. Volunteers from Michael's Army Reserve Unit took leave to join the effort. Tyler's classmates at Coral Springs High School organized prayer vigils. The story captured South Florida's attention, tapping into every parent's worst nightmare. Detective Ramon Castillo arrived on scene on day 5. He'd handled missing person cases in the Everglades before, but something about this one felt different from the start. The complete absence of any trace was unusual. Even in fatal accidents, the Everglades typically gave up some evidence, debris, personal belongings, something to indicate what had happened. The investigation into the soldier's life began to reveal cracks in the image of a devoted father and reliable veteran. Hidden in the military medical records that Lisa had never seen were psychiatric evaluations, medication prescriptions, therapy session notes she knew nothing about. Post-traumatic stress disorder, severe. Recommended for intensive outpatient treatment. Treatment that Michael had been skipping for months. The VA records painted a disturbing picture. The soldier had been missing therapy appointments at the VA hospital for weeks. His supervisor at the construction company where he worked reported increasingly erratic behavior. Michael had called in sick repeatedly, claiming migraine headaches that the VA doctors suspected were related to traumatic brain injury from roadside bomb explosions. The soldier's therapist provided details that made the investigation even more troubling. Michael had been struggling with intrusive thoughts about violence, particularly fears that he might hurt Tyler during one of his rage episodes. He'd developed elaborate rituals to prevent himself from being alone with his son when he felt angry or out of control. But there was more. The soldier's bank account was nearly empty. He'd been withdrawing large amounts of cash over the past 6 weeks, always in amounts just below federal reporting thresholds. Credit card records showed purchases of camping equipment, waterproof containers, emergency food supplies, water purification systems. Far more than would be needed for a weekend fishing trip. The detective discovered that the soldier had been researching survival techniques online, visiting websites about off-grid living and wilderness survival. His computer's browser history showed searches for information about edible plants in the Everglades, water sources, how to avoid detection by park rangers, techniques for long-term wilderness camping. Tyler's girlfriend provided another troubling detail. The son had mentioned that his father had been talking about getting away from everything, starting over somewhere peaceful. Tyler thought his father meant maybe moving to Montana or Alaska, somewhere they could fish and hunt year-round. The boy had been excited about the prospect of a new adventure with his dad. The insurance investigation complicated everything. The soldier had a $150,000 life insurance policy through the VA, naming Tyler as the primary beneficiary. Since Tyler was a minor, Lisa would control the money if both were declared dead. The soldier had increased the coverage just 6 months earlier. 3 weeks into the search, marine biology experts delivered a sobering assessment. Bodies lost in the Everglades could be consumed by alligators within hours or carried out to sea by tidal currents. The maze of channels and the dense canopy made aerial searches nearly useless. If the soldier and his son had died in the backcountry, there was a very real possibility that no trace would ever be found. The experts explained that the Everglades ecosystem was designed to recycle organic matter efficiently. Alligators, sharks, fish, and countless smaller scavengers could eliminate all traces of human remains within days. The acidic water and thick layers of organic sediment could break down metal and plastic. On April 15, exactly 4 weeks after the disappearance, the official search was called off. Coast Guard resources were needed elsewhere, and the probability of finding survivors had dropped to nearly zero. The case would remain open indefinitely, but active searching would end. The first year was agony for Lisa. She refused to accept that they were gone. She hired a private investigator who found nothing new. She organized monthly volunteer searches with members of Michael's Army unit, covering areas the official teams might have missed. Every lead led nowhere. The military community in South Florida embraced Tyler and Michael's memory. Annual memorial fishing tournaments drew hundreds of participants to raise money for PTSD awareness. A scholarship fund was established in Tyler's name for children of combat veterans. But as year 2 began, even the most optimistic supporters started accepting the inevitable truth. By year 5, facing mounting legal pressure and her own emotional exhaustion, Lisa finally agreed to death declarations for both her ex-husband and son. The insurance payout went into a foundation she established in Tyler's memory, providing mental health support for children of combat veterans. The money felt like blood money, but she was determined to use it to prevent other families from experiencing similar tragedies. Meanwhile, the researcher who would eventually solve the mystery was developing underwater sonar technology for environmental surveys, focusing on climate change effects in remote wilderness areas too dangerous for traditional fieldwork. He had no idea his research would soon crack one of Florida's most puzzling missing person cases. October 12, 2023. The researcher launched his autonomous underwater vehicle from a research vessel in a remote section of the Everglades, 12 miles northeast of Joe River. The area he was surveying had never been thoroughly searched during the original investigation. It was too isolated, too shallow during low tide, and too far from the established fishing spots where the soldier was known to take his son. The underwater terrain was treacherous. Ancient limestone formations created hidden caves and sinkholes. Thick seagrass beds could entangle equipment and make navigation nearly impossible. Tidal changes could strand vessels for hours in water only inches deep. It was exactly the kind of place where someone might go to disappear completely. At 3:42 that afternoon, something on the sonar display caught the researcher's attention. In a narrow channel that barely appeared on nautical charts, his equipment detected geometric shapes that didn't belong in nature. The shapes were partially buried in sediment and covered by marine growth, barely detectable even with sophisticated equipment. But they were definitely artificial. The researcher immediately contacted park authorities. 3 days later, a specialized marine recovery team descended into the murky water. What they found defied all expectations. The soldier's 16-foot aluminum fishing boat rested upright on the bottom, anchored in place with military precision. The vessel hadn't crashed or capsized. It had been deliberately positioned and secured with the kind of attention to detail that spoke of extensive planning and military training. Inside the boat, protected by waterproof containers and sealed in plastic bags, was camping gear that matched the inventory Lisa had provided 17 years earlier. But the most shocking discovery was hidden in a waterproof ammunition case bolted to the boat's hull. The case contained a journal. The leather-bound logbook was filled with the soldier's meticulous handwriting, each entry dated and timed with military precision. The first entry was dated March 18, 2006, the day they disappeared. The last entry was dated September 3, 2006. Father and son had survived in the Everglades for nearly 6 months. The detective, now nearing retirement, called Lisa at 4 o'clock on October 15, exactly 17 years after the search had been called off. Her voice carried the same desperate hope it had held all those years earlier when she asked if they were alive. The answer was no, but they had found answers. The journal's first entry shattered everything the family thought they knew. The soldier hadn't disappeared with Tyler by accident or because of some emergency. He had planned it meticulously. Tyler doesn't know yet, but we're not going back to the world today. Maybe not ever. The nightmares are getting worse. The rage episodes. Last week I almost hit him during an argument about homework. I can't become my father. I won't put Tyler through what I went through. This is the only way to keep him safe from me. The entry continued with details that revealed the depth of the soldier's psychological struggles. I've been planning this for months. Caching supplies, identifying safe locations, researching everything we'll need to survive off the grid. Tyler thinks this is just another fishing trip, but I'm hoping it becomes something more. A chance for us to heal away from all the triggers and pressures that make me dangerous to him. The early entries painted a picture of careful planning by a desperate father trying to escape his own demons. The soldier had been secretly preparing for months. He'd researched off-grid survival techniques, identified remote locations accessible only by boat, and systematically cached supplies throughout the area. But Tyler wasn't a willing participant initially. The second day's entry revealed the son's confusion and growing fear. Tyler is asking when we're going home. Had to tell him about my problems, the flashbacks, the anger issues. He's scared and confused. Called me selfish and he's probably right. But I can't risk hurting him. Prison or psychiatric hospital wouldn't help anyone. Out here, I can control the variables. The spring entries showed both father and son working together to survive in one of America's most challenging environments. They lived off fish and small game, trapped rainwater during thunderstorms, and moved constantly to avoid detection by park rangers and search teams. Tyler's Boy Scout training proved invaluable, and his initial anger gradually transformed into acceptance as he realized his father was genuinely struggling with psychological wounds from the war. By May, the dynamic had shifted completely. Tyler made me a fishing lure from bottle caps and wire. "For Father's Day," he said. He told me he understands why we're out here now. Said he'd rather have a sick dad who loves him than no dad at all. Breaking my heart and healing it at the same time. For the first time since I got back from Iraq, I slept through the night without nightmares. The summer entries revealed a father and son finding peace in the wilderness that had eluded them in civilization. The soldier's nightmares became less frequent. His rage episodes stopped completely. For the first time since returning from Iraq, he was sleeping through the night. Tyler was thriving, growing stronger and more confident with each passing week. July 4, 2006. Watched fireworks from Homestead from our camp 12 miles away. Tyler said he misses hamburgers and his girlfriend. I'm starting to think maybe I'm getting better. The nightmares are less frequent. Maybe we can go home soon. Tyler deserves to finish high school, to have a normal teenage experience. But the tone changed dramatically in late August. Everything is falling apart. Tyler is sick. Fever, vomiting, severe dehydration. Think it might be dysentery from bad water. My medical supplies aren't enough. He needs real medical care. But if I take him to a hospital, they'll arrest me for kidnapping. My son is dying because of my selfish choices. The son's condition worsened rapidly. Tyler is worse. Delirious with fever. Keeps asking for his mom. I've been trying to treat him with everything I have, but I'm not a medic. I'm just a broken soldier who destroyed his family. If I'd stayed home and gotten proper help, Tyler would be starting high school right now instead of dying in this goddamn swamp. The final entries were heartbreaking. Tyler died in my arms at 01:47 hours. My beautiful, brave, forgiving son died because I was too proud and too scared to ask for help. I held him until dawn. I can't live with what I've done. He told me he wasn't angry, that he understood why I brought him out here. He said he loved me anyway. The soldier's last entry was dated 2 days later. This is my final entry. Lisa, if you ever read this, know that Tyler forgave me even when I couldn't forgive myself. He said he understood why I brought him out here. He said he loved me anyway. I failed him as a father, but he never stopped believing I was a good man. I buried Tyler where he can see the sunrise over the water like he loved. I'm going to join him now. We'll be together. The recovery team found Tyler's burial site exactly where his father described, on a small mangrove island where he could watch the sunrise. The soldier had built a careful stone cairn to mark the spot, disguised to look natural but permanent enough to last decades. Michael's remains were discovered a quarter-mile away, weighted down with anchor chain in deep water where the current had carried his body into a limestone cave system. The coroner's report confirmed the timeline. Tyler had died of severe dehydration and dysentery in early September 2006, medical complications that would have been easily treatable in a hospital. The soldier had survived his son's death by 2 days before taking his own life. The revelation devastated everyone in different ways. Lisa felt a complex mix of grief, anger, and understanding. Her son had died because of his father's mental illness and pride, but she also recognized Michael's genuine love for Tyler and his desperate attempt to protect him from his own psychological wounds. The veteran community remained divided. Some saw Michael as a tragic figure overwhelmed by psychological wounds from his service in Iraq. Others viewed him as a criminal who had caused his son's death through recklessness. Stories like this remind us that behind every statistic, there's a family living with the fallout of war and untreated trauma. If this story moved you, give it a like so more people see the reality families face when PTSD goes untreated. And subscribe for more cases where the truth doesn't just tell a mystery, it teaches us something about who we are. Most of all, share your thoughts below. Was Michael a victim of war, or a man who made unforgivable choices? I'd love to know what you think.